Hello students, welcome back to Algebra 1B. Today we're going to do the third and final part of solving by pseudographing or fake graphing. Now in this lesson, we're going to up the difficulty. If you've noticed in the last couple of problems that we've done, the last couple of lessons, the numbers that we've ended up with have always worked out nicely, and that's been intentional to get you used to the process. However, we do need to get to the point where we can work with numbers that don't work out nicely. So today we're going to start off with a relatively simple one, but you'll see where the problem comes up right away. So if I go ahead and try to solve this one by pseudographing or fake graphing, the first thing I want to do is find the axis of symmetry. And that's, again, x equals negative b over 2a. So in this case, negative 5 over 2 times 1. Now already I see negative 5 over 2 times 1 is not a nice number. It's going to be negative 2.5 or negative 5 halves, whichever one you like more. I'm going to use negative 2.5 just because it'll plug into the calculator easier, but already I'm not dealing with a whole number, and that's inconvenient. However, I can just carry on from here and say I'm going to plug that in and go negative 2.5 in parentheses squared plus 5 times negative 2.5 minus 24 in order to find the vertex. And I can go ahead and just use my calculator for that. Negative 2.5 inside the parentheses squared plus 5 times negative 2.5 minus 24. That's going to equal negative 30.25. And here's where we get into the real problem here. If I graph this, I'm going to get... First, my axis of symmetry is at negative 2.5. And then my vertex is at negative 2.5, but it's at negative 30.25. Now, this is not a nice square number like the ones that we've been dealing with, but I can still move forward with my pseudographing here because I know that this is going to go up something like this, and there are these two solutions that I'm looking for. And in order to get there, I need to go up 30.25. So now the big question is, how much do I need to go to the left and to the right in order to go up 30.25? Now, in order for us to figure out this, let's consider an easier one. When I needed to go up 9, you knew that I had to go to the left and to the right 3, because 3 squared is 9. By the same logic, if I were to do the same thing, if I had to go up 25, I would know that I had to go right and left 5, because 5 squared equals 25. So now in our new case, I have this parabola, and I have to go up by 30.25. And so now what I have here is this number that I'm not sure about. But I do know that whatever that number is, when I square it, it has to equal 30.25. Well, what I can do here is do an inverse operation, that if some number squared equals 30.25, then the opposite of square is square root. The square root of 30.25 must be that number. So that means I can just square root 30.25, and that tells me that I need to go to the left and to the right 5.5. So let's go back over here. If I want to go up 30.25, then I need to go to the right 5.5, and I need to go to the left 5.5. So starting at negative 2.5, right here, negative 2.5, if I go right 5.5, I will land at, I'm just going to go right here, negative 2.5, and I'm going to add 5.5. And that means I'm going to land at 3. Now I can go ahead and do a quick switch, and I'll just do minus 5.5 to see what happens when I go left, and I land at negative 8. So that means my answer for this one is that the variable a could equal negative 8, or it could equal positive 3. Squigglies, because it's one variable with multiple solutions. Now, let's go ahead and crank up the difficulty a little bit more. Now, we're going to see here that I'm starting off with a leading coefficient here. Now, I'm not going to treat this any differently than I did before. I don't want the leading coefficient to be there, so I'm just going to divide everything by 2. So that means I'm going to get n squared plus 3 divided by 2 is 1.5n minus 7 is equal to 0. Now already, before I even start pseudographing, I'm already dealing with the decimal, so you can see how the complexity of this is starting to ramp up. But let's go ahead, let's find our axis of symmetry. Would be x equals negative b over 2a, or in this case negative 1.5 over 2 times 1. And I'll go ahead and use a calculator for that. Negative 1.5 divided by 2 is equal to negative 0.75. That's my axis of symmetry. So I'll go ahead and do a quick fake graph of that. Right here is negative 0.75. Now, plugging in this value into my equation, I get negative 0.75 squared plus 1.5 times negative 0.75 minus 7. And again, this is good calculator work. Negative 0.75 to the second power plus 1.5 times negative 0.75 minus 7. Negative 7.5625. So I've got my vertex right here, negative 7.5625. And then it's going to go up, and it's going to intersect in 2 spots. Where are they? I don't know. I do know that it does need to go up by 7.5625. So in order to figure out how much I go to the right, I need to know what the square root of that is. So we'll just go square root of 7.5625 is equal to 2.75. So I do need to go to the right 2.75. So starting at negative 0.75 and then going to the right 2.75, we'll use our calculator again. Negative 0.75 plus 2.75 is equal to 2. So that one would actually be over here, but that one is going to be 2. And then negative 0.75 minus 2.75 is equal to negative 3.5. So that means this one right here is negative 3.5. So our answer for this one is n equals negative 3.5 and 2. Okay, now this one right here is kind of the tip of the top, because now not only are we going to have a leading coefficient, but we need to adjust the equation to get it back into standard form first. So let's go ahead and make this one equal 0. I'm going to add x to both sides, and I'm going to add 3x squared to both sides. 6x squared minus 1x minus 7 is equal to 0. Now I'm going to go ahead and divide everything by 6, and I'm going to get x squared minus 1/6 x minus 7/6 equals 0. Oh boy, now we're starting to get into the ugly stuff. Okay, so let's just dive straight in. What's the axis of symmetry here? The axis of symmetry is positive 1/6 over 2 times 1. And in this case, I can see this would be, I'm going to deal with fractions here. If you want to convert this to decimals, that's fine. 1/6 divided by 2 is the same thing as 1/6 times 1/2, which is 1/12. Okay, plugging that in, I would get 1/12 squared minus 1/6 times 1/12 minus 7/6. Now, in this case, I'm going to switch over to a calculator that handles fractions a little bit better. I'm going to go over to the Desmos.com scientific calculator, because it will let me do this. 1/12 squared. Let's make sure we put that squared in the right spot. Let's just fix this real quick. 1/12 squared minus 1/6 times 1/12 minus 7/6. Okay, and the nice thing about Desmos is this actually looks like the thing that I just typed in, but I get negative 1.1736111. And the nice thing about Desmos is it's also got this fraction converter right here, so you could use the decimals, but you can see that's a really ugly decimal number right there. Or I could click this button right here, and it tells me that this is negative 169 1/44. So that looks horrible, but it's actually not as bad as it seems, because watch what happens here. If I graph this, this has an axis of symmetry of 1/12, and then the vertex is on the axis of symmetry at negative 169 144. And then it's going to go up like this, and it's going to intersect at 2 points that I don't know. I do know that it has to go up 169 144. So the amount that it goes right is going to be whatever the square root of 169 144 is. Now again, this is where the Desmos calculator kind of shines, because I can do the square root of 169 144, and I get 1.083333, but then if I switch it into a fraction, I see it's going to go to the right 13/12. So knowing that from my picture right here, I'm going to start at 1/12, I can just say, okay, let's start at 1/12, and then I'm going to go right 13/12. And that's 1.1667. Let's change that. That's 7/6. And then I can just go over here and say to go to the left, let's make that a subtraction sign, and that one is at -1. So my answer to this, all said and done, is x is equal to -1 or 7/6.